Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I am here with Shah Barrett.
Hello.
Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
And Wendy Vella.
Hello.
I have to
I
look at your
raise my
names.
arm like that.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's like,
What, you can't remember our names after all this
No,
time?
it's like I'm in the flow and I'm like, who are you again?
Yeah, in the flow, and you don't know who we are.
Yeah, no.
We're the most important people in your life,
I
besides
know,
your
I don't
husband and
understand.
child.
I
and-
recognize your faces. It's the names.
oh, this is a good start, isn't it?
Anyway,
On topic.
On
topic.
So we're answering some reader questions this week. We thought it was time after many months of ignoring them.
We never ignore our readers.
No,
listeners.
Yes. No,
Either
we
way.
have not ignored anyone. I take that back. So we just have some questions that we thought we'd go through and just try and answer for people and see if we can give any kind of light on any kind of subject on the three of them. So leap straight in.
So I'm going to start with question 1.
Okay.
And we were not going to give names because, we don't want to single anyone out. So the first one is, I lost my job. And first of all, can we say we're really sorry about that? I lost my job and have been working from home for a month now and find I'm not getting as many words written as I thought I would. Who wants to answer that one first? No? Okay.
I think that's a really common thing, right?
Yeah,
you hear about this all the time. And I'm sure we all did the same.
Absolutely.
I remember thinking I was going to get 10 times more work done because I was going to be at home.
That person's doing so well because they're doing it full time.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work
time.
around, I think, to get that mindset that now this is a job, it's just a different location. And I think writing full time is far different to what you were doing usually.
And I think on top of that, when you're not writing full time and you're fitting it into your day, you're uber organized, you're uber busy, and you're like, you have to just stay on task. And it's like, I'm working, I'm writing, I'm cooking, whatever you're doing. So I think it runs a bit smoothly. But all of a sudden, when I was home, I had a lovely desk that was very neat because I tidied it a lot rather than writing. And I'll do some writing later. Or I'll do this later. I'll do that. I tell you what, it takes a hell of a lot of self-discipline to be self-employed and working from home and having to just, every day.
It's a lot harder.
It is really, really hard. So what are some of the things we would suggest that need to be done to help this listener?
I schedule time.
I was going to say block out your day. Put a plan in place that this is your writing time and nothing interferes with it. Absolutely nothing. Turn off your phone, whatever.
But equally, don't expect you're going to be writing solidly for 8 hours. I think we also set ourselves up with some unrealistic expectations because even in most workplaces, you're not just doing the one thing the whole time, particularly something as deeply concentrating as writing. You're talking to people, you're maybe moving around or whatever, and I think to expect any more than 2 or 3 hours of focused writing time is pretty hard, really hard.
And really hard on the body. And I think that's another thing. If we've come from a work environment, even if we're sitting all day, we're still getting up in between and doing things that when you're home, there's just you and you can sit in your chair or you can do what you do. It's not good for the body. And so you need you cannot just sit your butt in a chair for 2 or 3 hours and not move. It's just, you won't get longevity in this career if that's the case.
So there's that whole thing of remember to take breaks. So it's not just about saying I'm going to be able to write 8 hours a day. It's like I can write an hour, I take a break, I write, do it. That's when I am most productive, is when I kind of give myself these scheduled breaks. So you're not make sure that you know that it has to be done as part of the process. Like you're not thinking, I'm taking illicit time away from when I should be writing. It's like this is just as important as the writing time.
And maybe work out
chunking,
chunking.
They call it chunking, right?
Different time blocks work for different people, don't they? Like the Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes focus work, 5-minute break that you stand up and just move or go and get a drink or whatever, another 25 minutes. And then I think it's every 4 or every 3 you have a longer break kind of thing. You can get different timers for your phones with these different apps. That helps, having a little like a phone charm.
And work out when you're most productive. Sorry.
Talking,
you go. No, I'm just saying working out when you're most productive is the best time to write, and that'll come. But just working that out, and the ads are sort of whatever else you can do with half a brain, whereas the writing you need to be fully consumed.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, talking of phones, is to maybe when you're trying to write, not have them by you as well, which completely flies in what I just said. But
they say that even just having your phone, even if it's tipped upside down, you can't see it, is still a distraction. Like even if you've got all the notifications turned off, everything like that, that's still you can.
I think it's actually quite a good tip, I think, to put your phone in the kitchen. And so when you've done your however many minutes you've decided you're going to write for, or you might have decided to do a word count, whatever works for you, and then you have to get up, that's your break time. So you're going to go in the kitchen, make a cup of tea or whatever, you can check your messages then.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
For an allotted time.
And make sure you don't have Facebook open as you're trying to write and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And because it's so easy to get distracted when you're at home. The things, you know, I found that even my husband, he's very good, but he sort of thinks, well, I'm home, so I'll do the washing and I'll do this and I'll, you know, like it's your job involves with having housework, meals, everything is your job. But you have to go, actually, no, these are my time. These are my hours I work. I'll deal with the rest later, or he can deal with them, you know, in his own way, you know, later on. But I think it's really important to understand that you are working. It is your job. You know, you have to have set hours. Well,
and even if you've got children, if you were going out to work, you managed it, didn't you? You managed the housework and all that sort of thing. So you can do this. You just may be doing it at a different time of the day.
Yeah.
You know, so
scheduling is a big one. That seems to work for a lot of people, especially when you're very first starting working to a schedule, because quite often in your work environment, that's what you would work to, right? You would work to a schedule. You'd be clocking in and out or whatever.
And you work on something till it's done.
Yeah. Having deadlines is also good. Like maybe just think about, even if it's just self deadlines. I find that booking in an editor keeps me on track. So I just have this external deadline that I meet as I go along.
And I think working in a work environment within your home is a good thing. Finding a space that isn't in the lounge, you know, or isn't, you know, your own space somewhere, even if it's in a closet, you know, like it's your space and it's your work environment. And when you're in that work environment, that's what it's for. That sort of thing. So
in a similar vein as music, I listen to music and that kind of keeps me in the zone. And in fact, I reckon, this is my theory, I've got myself to the point where I listen to the same music whenever I write. I've trained my brain to actually know that that's time to switch on and write when I listen to that music. And it's make sure that I personally like pumping music, like kind of that real kind of got a beat to it rather than kind of slow. I used to listen to classical music and it doesn't, I probably wouldn't do that anymore because it doesn't give me that same kind of pumping.
I've got a soundtrack I've listened to for ever since I started writing, really full time, and I'll put it on in the car sometimes, and I just immediately go straight to where I'm like, oh well, I need to do that, you know, like it's quite weird. It's like it gets me.
I've trained our brains to think in a certain way when you hear certain sounds.
I have
well, I think we've covered that one off, and we hope that's helped.
A couple of things that I've noticed other writers talking about. One was getting dressed to actually go to as if you're going to work. Maybe not the whole hair and makeup thing, but maybe putting on street clothes as opposed to, you know, sweats. And similar vein to the music, but also smells or changing your environment that's another big trigger as well for some people. And also, God forbid, turning the internet off, like turning your modem off as well if you're so
I was going to say that actually before, turn your email as well as Facebook off. Like the urge to check email is strong in this one whenever I'm
what did I miss?
Like there's this real sense of like, what did I miss? And then I'll often find myself, I'll be writing and then like I'm going to this days and then I look up 10 minutes later and suddenly I'm applying to get this be part of something over, you know, like there's been some email that I've gone in and checked and I'm like totally have to do that, and then I'm halfway through this application process, I'm like, oh wait, no, I was writing, like what the heck. So email
And that, I think sometimes when you actually need, if you're struggling in that environment, quite often it's good to take a break and go out and work in another environment. That's like a coffee shop, because you can't. You're just in that environment doing your thing. Don't sign on to the internet. Don't, the Wi-Fi or whatever. You just write, and your motivation level will change completely when you're in an environment like that. It does for me. I write really well when I'm out, and shares the same.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're in lockdown, there are other environments in your own house that I actually follow the sun around, because the sun makes me feel happier, makes my writing better. So so I'll be sit in my office for a certain amount of time, but I have that luxury. I don't have any kids at home, so and then I'll end up in the lounge for a couple of hours, and then and in between times I'm doing other things. But I'll even be sitting on the bed at some stage in the afternoon, because just to give my back a rest.
And working with others too, which we found helps. Again, if you can't do it physically, then there are online writing sprint groups, depending on what time zone. There's usually, you can find them if you ask in different author groups and things. And I know a lot of people find that really helpful as well. They don't, because it can be quite lonely, particularly if you're at home by yourself. And so, look after your mental health as well as your physical health.
Okay, I think we've covered that.
No, I've got one more. See,
okay.
You're just jumping ahead. I was out the other day, and I was out in the garden, and I was demossing my apple tree, and it was very soothing. And what it made me as I was standing there, and normally I would think, I should be listening to a podcast, I should be learning more, I should be doing something. And actually what I realized was it was very soothing not to be doing anything, like just giving myself that downtime, de-stressing. Like, it's really hard to write when you're fully stressed and you're like, I should be writing more. Oh no.
Well, don't cover that anymore, because that's our next question.
Next question. Okay, all right, sorry.
All right.
Why don't we lead on to that? That's a nice segue.
Okay, let's lead on to the next question we received.
Tree.
Yeah, Trudy's mossy tree.
I've lost vaguely like it's a euphemism for something, and I just
no, it's not a good euphemism. No, it's not.
No,
cut it out. Right. You had to go there. You always do. I lost the ability to write, and struggling to find motivation with a deadline looming is our next question.
And that's a lot of people in this day and age, isn't it? Like,
in this time and what we're going through,
and it's want to as opposed to have to, isn't it? Those are the two things, and there's nothing that will more easily put up a barrier than you have to. You have to have your backside
in that seat. Writing.
Get those words down now.
And you convince yourself that you've got, like, I convinced myself that I've got weeks to do this. And I break it all down per day, how many words I should write. And, I've now got a week to go. And I'm like, oh, dear. And that's not what I said, though, but I'm trying to be polite. I need to get it. So for me, it's about, if I'm losing motivation, I pack up my bag, I get in the car and I drive, and I go to a coffee shop. I'll go to a different environment, and I'll just sit with my headphones on in that environment, and I'll work. And that seems to be the trigger for me to be able to go, right. It wasn't working around. Home, so it works out. And that's me. Yeah, that's how it works for me.
For me, with motivation, I find I've done a lot of work through Brooke Castillo, and for me, like the last book that I just finished. Yeah, strangely.
Never heard of that.
And I found, what I realized was that I had this really terrible kind of mindset around it. Like, it was like, I have to write. I've got to get this done. I'm running behind. It's all, maybe it's going to be a terrible book, and this is going to, like all this kind of thing running through my head. And I had to literally kind of take a step back and go, actually, do I want to be a writer? Like, why am I writing? Is it because I love to write? Like, is it because I enjoy the process? Is it because I love to create character? Like, remind yourself about why you love to write and why you're actually doing it, and then kind of come from that place and kind of look at it from that perspective. And then you'll find that you're a lot calmer and you're a lot more excited about getting to writing. Like, probably to me, the reason you may have lost motivation is because you're telling yourself something along those lines, like there's something going on, you feel like you can't do it because the world has gone to pot, like, you just, things are happening, or there's something, like this. And if you can kind of bring it back down to that kind of, why do I want to write? Why do I love this? Why is, I want to be doing this. This is exciting, getting to sit down and write. Like, maybe that change of mindset will kind of help you kind of find that motivation again.
And what makes you happy about it? Like, how will you feel when the book is done?
Yeah.
You know, if you've never had that feeling before, it's going to be awesome. But if you have, then you have something to pin on it, don't you? To go, well, this too shall pass, and the book will be done, and then I'm going to feel like that, and I'm going to be so excited to start the next book. It's just getting over that hurdle, isn't it? Because I think if you keep telling yourself something's hard, it never actually gets any easier.
Yeah,
you know, it's
and sometimes just writing something different is freeing. It might never be published. It might just like to cleanse your palate a little bit. Just go, okay, well, I'll just write whatever comes into my mind. And quite often that'll just unlock whatever's going on. And then you go back and you go, okay, I'm away now. You know, I mean, my process drives me crazy. I think it's getting harder every time I write a book. It's getting harder.
That's very depressing for those of us that
only insofar as after so many books, you're sort of trying to find that point of difference, but not reinvent the wheel. And I think, you know, and that's something you're aware that people read it because they'll enjoy it, but you want to also still give them that thrill of something a little bit different. So
I think too, you have to be careful of the fact that you might have plotted your way into a corner, and maybe that's the book has to take another turn, and no matter how you try and force it in there, it ain't going to go. So you know, maybe you just have to sit back and go, okay, let's see what's going to happen here.
That's actually a really good point, Cher, because it's most often when I kind of start feeling like, I don't want to write and I don't want to be there as often. I feel like it's because I don't know what's going to happen, or I've plotted myself into some kind of corner. And I know for some people, like say Wendy, who just wants to write and kind of let things come, whereas for me, I need to know kind of where I'm going for it to kind of to loosen myself up. I know you've tried. You don't have to change, Wendy.
I've tried so many times. I want to know where I'm going.
Yeah,
I would love to be able to sit down and go bam, bam, bam. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
you know.
No, because then you'd be writing a book every 2 minutes, and quite frankly, that's not fair to the rest of us.
Exactly.
Let's just leave you with that process.
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, the book I'm writing now, I've changed the suspense element in it 3 times. So I've rewritten it 3 times. You know, like
and you still managed to write a 70,000 word book. It's like, I'm not going to compare myself to that.
Yeah.
What are you going to say, Shah?
Well, I was just going to say this.
No, but we it's just about getting it.
Oh, sorry.
Stop talking, Wendy. Go, Shah.
There's also the creativity side of it as well. And so maybe like Trudy was talking about her demossing her tree. So that can really help actually getting like literally grounding yourself, putting your hands in the soil, or working, like taking a walk in nature, or all of that kind of stuff is really important too, because I think we spend so much time in the air, in our heads up there. It's actually really good to bring it down a little bit as well. And if you Google EFT for writers, there's a really lovely, she's got this most amazing Irish accent, and she's on YouTube, and she does, so it's tapping basically, and it sounds woo-woo, but it really does work. And so why not just give yourself a little tap away the anxiety kind of thing, you know, which is so much easier to say than actually do. But sometimes it's good to try different things and just sort of do something different. And also, like, obviously reading and again, going back to what Trudy was saying, reminding yourself why you love to write. Most of us love to write because we love reading and we love the escapism. So maybe watching something cool on Netflix or whatever, if it's romance, getting out your 1995 Pride and Prejudice DVD set that you've basically worn a hole in from playing it so many times, but that kind of thing is cool.
I think also not just like, okay, so yes, watching Netflix and movies and stuff, and also it used to be I like going to the plays and opera and things like that, which is not so possible back in the olden days when we used to be allowed to leave our houses. That's what but in these times it's things like, even like I go to karate, or I'll go out and go for a walk, and I like going somewhere new and somewhere different. Like that's kind of fun. Like doing something you haven't ever done before, so you have to concentrate a little bit harder on it. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive. You're like, oh my God, I've got to get this book done because it's due to the editor on this day, and they're saying take a break and go for a walk. What are they, insane? But it's like, you actually are more productive if you can write for a set amount of time and then take a break and do something else for a set amount of time and then go back to the writing. Like I can write more in a day if I do that structure than if I force myself to sit at my desk and try and write for hours on end. Like that is actually quite tiring and exhausting, and you will never get the thing done that you need to get done, versus if you can do a kind of a structure where your brain gets to relax and think about something different for a little bit of time.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's good. And that's what I did yesterday. You know, I was really bogged down, knew I had a lot to do. I was just like, I got to get out. So I just got out, and I got a lot more words done in the afternoon because of it, you know. I think you have to give yourself permission to have a lunch break and have a, you know, and have those breaks. Okay, I think we've covered off that, have we, ladies?
Yes, perfect.
So, yes.
Okay, last question. An interesting one from our standpoint. I have enjoyed modest success in the US, but want to learn how to break into the Australian and New Zealand markets. Do you have any ideas and tips?
Go, Shah.
So I think we can expand this out a little bit too. So this particular listener was writing to us about that, and I'm guessing that they're either a Aussie or a Kiwi, but it would also apply if you're anywhere else, you know, Canada or Antarctica or that kind of place.
I can't imagine there's a large market in Antarctica.
Well, you don't.
About romance writing community over there.
What do.
Yeah, good point, Cher. Good point. So I'm just going to kind of basically reiterate what I did actually reply. Unlike Trudy's little joke at the beginning, we do actually reply to our listeners. So I'm just going to go over a couple of bullet points that I had written to her. So, like everything, it kind of depends on what genre your book is. And we are I can't say that word.
Unashamed.
We're romance authors, and we don't need to.
We're proud commercial genre fiction authors who are focused on a global market, and our attention is not on local sales here as New Zealanders. And so it does depend on what your market is. Now, if you're writing a children's book set in Australia for Australian children, that's a whole different ballgame to if you're writing a romance, regardless of where it's set. But it's you know, for the global market, as it were. So it depends what you're writing, and also, frankly, where you've only got so much attention, where it's going to be best placed for you. There's a lot of people that a lot of writers feel that, you know, they really want to see their work in New Zealand or their local bookstores. That's fine. You can get it in through your print books through Ingram Spark. You can get books into the local libraries. You know, we have access to this. In Australasia, we have a service called Wheelers, which is like a supplier of local books through to public libraries and schools. I would say join one of the local writers kind of groups that will usually have people that are trying to do, you know, focus on the local market. You can still get into your ebooks into libraries and things like that. What you want is people requesting it, and then, you know, they'll add it to the thing. Nothing beats a local connection. I mean, Trudy used to be a journalist, so she'll talk about, you know, maybe some local press, that kind of thing. There's you do have to put a little bit more effort in. Same goes for regional TVs and things, TV stations, but it needs an angle. So yes, there's often the local author thing, but if it's a local author writing about, you know, a Kiwi that they found and is now they've trained, kind of thing.
It can speak.
Yes.
Kiwi bird.
But it speaks in French. Weirdly.
Bonjour.
It speaks in French weirdly, and
It's speaking French.
Je m'appelle Kiwi.
Yeah. Exactly.
Parlez-vous français?
Oh my goodness.
Comment tu parles?
Who doesn't want a Kiwi accent speaking French? Oh dear.
Yeah,
Anyway, local school.
Yeah, that's all we can add to this whole conversation.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is it's basically a lot more legwork, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And again, for us, it comes down to the calculation of effort versus reward. And some, like I say, it depends on what your goals are in this. It is definitely possible, but frankly, if you're going to pay your mortgage, you're looking at a global audience rather than a local one. It's kind of the bottom line.
And you've also got to look at pricing as well, because if you're in a country away from where the books are getting printed, it's the costs just escalate ridiculously.
It's hugely, and you can do local printing as well, but then you're looking at bulk lots, and again, that's where the four of us are very focused on not being that indie author of the old times, which is where you basically spent your life savings printing off books, and you've got this lovely 5,000 in the garage kind of thing that you maybe sell at a local fair, like 10 like,
and if you want to do that is fine.
Into it, that's great, but we're not, and so there is a cost to everything, and usually it's time. So it can be done, but I would question, why do you want to do it? And then that will dictate your moves.
I mean, and it's not like we've all got Kiwi readers, like people who say, "Oh, I love reading your books," blah blah blah. But they're not. It's just not where our focus is. And I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I feel like in New Zealanders are still really attached to print books.
Yes.
And I mean, and I have print books available, but I feel like my main audience is ebooks these days, and I think that that's still a sort of a developing thing in New Zealand. I don't know what Australia is like. I don't know.
I get quite excited when I sell some print books. But that is not my main income.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's like the cherry on the top, isn't it, as opposed to the main cupcake, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, Wendy and I are just doing a book fair, but we're going to a book fair next month. We will be taking some of our books to sell, and I hope we do really, really well. Somebody else organised it. We've just paid for a table. We've got books on hand. We've ordered a few more, and we'll see how it goes. But and maybe come back to you with some results there. But certainly, like Shah said, if you tap into some sites or your local chapters, then they might have people that are doing that already, and you can just tag along for a nominal amount, and be a presence and help out as much as you can. But ultimately, it'll show you if it's worthwhile or not doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, you would do it for the meeting of the people thing, as opposed to expecting huge sales. I mean, we've all been to different RWA conventions again back in the old days, and really famous authors were talking about how they'd turn up at a book signing, for example, or a book fair, and like people would be asking them where the restrooms were, like, and these are big names, so it's kind of like have very realistic expectations for it. I mean, there's a lot of people that love that. There's also, don't figure you have to do it either. Like, the idea for me of doing anything like that in public would be literally my worst nightmare. I would rather go to the dentist, and I'm
going to be honest with you, that's how I feel, but I'm
you don't have to do it.
No.
Do what
she does, because she's making her, but
well, I'm not. She had something else on. I said, "Do you want to come?" She said no, and now she can come because that's not happening because of things. So I'm just giving it a go. I just thought it would
this is me being proactive, apparently.
And the place that it's at, the venue that it's being held at, is a very sort of literary place. So I'm thinking that the person that's organised it, who's one of our own, she has done a really good job, and she's done an amazing job. Yeah, and hopefully she'll get heaps of authors to come along. I don't know how successful it'll be, but if you don't try something, you don't know. So this is just an avenue that you could try. Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have anything to add? No. And there was a stony silence. Okay. I'm good. Well, those three questions I think were pretty good ones, to be fair. Yeah. And I think
actually I do have one thing to add. Sometimes getting out there in your local community is a way of kind of secondary selling, if you like. So a lot of authors do talks at libraries, and I'm looking at our Trudeau's here. Again, it doesn't translate to sales necessarily. Neither does running a podcast, just for the FYI. Can I just say here, people, we do this for love, not for selling. you know.
Yeah.
I've seen that actually a couple of times. This isn't so much the local market, but authors talking about starting a podcast. And so first of all, if you're doing a non-fiction podcast and you're writing fiction, there is no crossover at all.
So if you're thinking of starting a podcast, make sure that it's reader focused.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And even then again, I still question the amount of time and the amount of input versus what you get back, unless you're a specialist, unless it's a specialist topic.
I was looking at the charts the other day and I was quite surprised. There's I can't remember the name of the podcast. It was basically one where they were reading out a book and it was in the top 10 of whatever list I was looking at. And there was another one that was basically reading Jane Austen. In fact, it must have been the Jane Austen one.
We could do that.
Yeah.
I love Jane Austen. Who wants us to read?
Yeah, just reading chapter by chapter, reading Jane Austen, one of the Jane Austen books. And it was
I could do that. I could do a snooty voice.
Snooty voice. It's all about the snooty
Darcy.
voice.
I could certainly do Mr. Darcy.
I think if we ever run out of topics, we probably
would just start reading Jane Austen.
Well, I don't think we would. I think
we'd probably read from our own books, just saying.
Yeah,
okay, we've so totally just vanished off into like the ether, right?
But the point was, don't start a podcast about how to publish your self-publishing books, and with the idea, well, like we did, that it might sell more books. Yeah, it doesn't, but we love doing it anyway. So what we discovered is we're quite happy to keep going, but it's
we're givers, not takers.
And we've met some amazing people, so that's
reasoning. But if you're going to start one for readers, you have to think about what readers might want to listen to and hear about.
Sounds good. I think that's probably a good place to end, actually.
Yeah, okay, and just to kind of reiterate, if you've got any questions or any topics you'd like us to cover, please send them on through email hello@spargirlspodcast.com, or come and either comment on one of our episodes on our website at spargirlspodcast.com. And if you're listening to this and you get enjoyment from it, we would really appreciate it if you would share this with your writer friends, because we love new listeners and we also love people that post reviews. Just saying.
Yeah, that's sort of big.
We don't love those that don't post reviews, only those that do.
We don't dislike them, but we love them more if they do.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad we clarified that.
And on the podcast topics, don't even think about asking us to read for you, okay? Just
no. You've got the snooty voice.
No,
you
that was
promised the snooty voice.
No. That was not.
I can't believe that you've given that and then taking it away.
All right, come on now.
All right,
let's wind it up.
Thanks for listening.
We've done the
episode.
Oh, we can. Okay, cool.
Another episode of Spargirls Podcast. Where can we be found, Sean?
Oh my goodness!
Done it.
If you didn't just listen
to
me.
Did you say?
Yes, she did. She did all the places.
All the places.
All the places.
Right,
so we'll see you next time, because I'm going to go and punch these guys.
Okay. We're not a. Bye now.
Bye. Keep well. Bye.